Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the ice, 6 p.m. here on ASTV. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Case Financial Group, Toby Hockey, Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, as well as Dokes Book Fuels. Tonight's guest is a good friend of mine out west, what am I talking about? Out west, one province over in Saskatchewan. But he's doing a little bit of work for a team in Flin Flon. The Bombers needed some help. It's an old friend of his, clients, if you want to call it that. But the bottom line is Mike could not say no to helping out the Flin Flon Bombers and doing some play-by-play action for them this upcoming week. 4 games on the slate, 2 down, 2 to go. They head over and take on Estevan and Weyburn to finish off the week. So we're going to touch base with Mike in the top 3 in the SJ, as well as a conversation we've had several times on another show of ours here on ASTV in terms of cross-border play and whether or not that could be something that could exist. We have not seen it. We were supposed to see it last month in the MJSJ showcase. It did not happen. But we will talk quickly about that. Plus, we'll talk about the professional boys, what's wrong with our NHL Jets. And last but not least, it's the beginning of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. They've already taken place. We've seen some women's hockey. Is that going to be the event that we're going to spend most time on? We'll find out from Mike. But please welcome Mike Stackhouse to On the Ice. Mike Stackhouse joining me from the confines of his own room, I believe. I don't think he's in a hotel yet, is he, Mike?
No, not till tomorrow night.
Not till tomorrow night. What's it like being back on the road?
I'm getting too old for this, to be honest with you. It's I did the game on Tuesday night. I live in Yorkton and did the game, the Bombers and the Terriers on Tuesday night. It was the first game that I've done for play-by-play in over 2 years. I was dreadful. I was terrible. I wasn't helped by the fact that the game itself wasn't very good. And then last night in Notre Dame, really good broadcast location there. The press box isn't the most comfortable place to be for 2.5, 3 hours, but the location is awesome. You're right above the penalty box and you're right on top of the ice, and you can get into the play a little bit easier than you can in Yorkton. And so I had a really good time last night doing the game there. It was a good hockey game too. Like, I think the shots ended up being like 48-30 or something like that. Like it was a game that saw a lot of action, which is what I like. Flin Flon had a 3-1 lead with about 9 minutes left in the third period, and then all of a sudden the ice shifted, and I think Notre Dame outshot them 20-2 in the last 9 minutes of the third, and the 2 or 3 minutes that it went for overtime, and they scored 3 goals. They had a 5-on-3 goal that tied it at 3 after they got the second goal, and then in overtime the Bombers got this new goalie backup, Ben Montgomery, who actually played really good, I thought, last night. Made 2 amazing stops in overtime, and the game maybe should have been over sooner than it was. But it was a real good hockey game.
It's amazing when you talk about a goalie getting peppered in the last 9 minutes, 20-2, and you never can count a team out in any league. Case in point, like last night. I mean, Notre Dame's not one of the stronger top 3 teams this year in the SJ, but here they are taking on a team that was quite frankly 7 wins in a row before this past week, and they've gone back and forth in the wins-loss column earlier this week, winning in Yorkton, and then last night's overtime loss. What is it about Flin Flon that you like so much about their team?
Well, what I like, traditionally with Mike Reagan coach teams is the high-octane offense. They don't seem to have a whole lot of that this year, although Jaden Mercier is a guy that has kind of flown under the radar a little bit. He missed half the season. He's up to, I think, 28 points in 21 games. So, you won't see him in the scoring leaders, but he's very much an impact player, one of the better players in the league. So their scoring up front isn't what it used to be. When they had some of their guys, especially some of the guys that they brought in from Quebec, they don't necessarily have that up front this year, although they've got a rookie, Jeremy Tremblay, who's not on the trip. Dealing with a health issue. So I haven't seen him, but he's a rookie and he's from Quebec and he's a pretty good player for them. They've got Xavier Lapointe on the back end as a veteran, a major junior experienced player, and he's fun to watch. I mean, he had a rush in the game last night. He picked up the puck behind his own net. He went end to end with it, got a really good shot on net, and goalie gave up a rebound, and all of a sudden the Hounds were off to the races, and the first guy back was Lapointe. So, and I love that in the D. Those are my favorite kind of D men to watch.
The guys that can go 200 feet in the flick of a switch and realize that they got to bail somebody out because.
Or 400 feet, or 400 feet in this case, right? Because you're going 200, and then all of a sudden, the Hounds start a transition and they get to the red line, and Lapointe's in front of them again. So it's awesome. It's great.
See, you mentioned Lapointe, you mentioned Tremblay. You look at their scoring in the Flin Flon roster. Balanced is the word that I look at. I mean, nobody's above 40 points yet, or they're very close, but there's 6 players between 36 and 32. And like you said, Tremblay's missed a good chunk of the season due to injury. But does that show that this team is built for the long run, where it's not scoring line 1, scoring line 2? It's you got to be worried about the top 9 forwards, really, plus the couple of defense.
I think for Flin Flon, the key for them is going to be they've got some depth, but do they have guys that can score a big goal when you need to get a goal? And it's one thing to have offense by committee, but sometimes you're gonna make sure that you need that guy who can score when you really need a goal. And I think Mercier is that guy. We'll see tomorrow night in the game against Estevan, but for me, he's an impact player. Like he's a guy that I think is their best forward. And maybe some people that follow the league close are aware of that, but I think if you just sort of look at the stats and then you sort of look at, they got a bunch of guys with 13, 14, 15 goals, and then they got Mercier with I think 12. Well, Mercier, if he played the whole year, would be maybe at 20, 21, 22. So I mean, he is their best player. I liked his game last night too, especially in the first half of the game. They all kind of and I don't know what happened last night. It was just a weird game. It was Notre Dame got that second goal, and then they got a 5-on-3, and they got the third goal, and it just, I mean, you talk about momentum swings and things of that nature, and that's what happened last night. Talked
also about the rookie netminder in yesterday against the Hounds. Not the case for most of the season. Their Cal Savell, 30 games played. Very good record. I mean, his save percentage is just under .930, but also, 2.43 goals against. They've been riding him for a good chunk of this season. Do you see that playing out for the rest of the season, or do you see him getting a bit more rest as they get to the finish line?
He's a really good goalie. Mike Reagan and I joked about this the other night after the Yorkton game on Tuesday that Cal Shell had played in. I said, you can maybe go to Ben Montgomery on Wednesday. I said, if you think about it, you got a 4-game road trip here. You want to use Cal on Friday in Estevan. You've already picked up the 2 points. So, you've kind of got some leeway here if you want to go to Ben on Wednesday so that you got Cal on Friday. And then if you really need to, Weyburn is the worst team in the league for Saturday. And you could go back to Cal again on Saturday if you really, are desperate to pick up 2 points to end the road trip. And yet you can still work Ben in there and give Ben at least 1 game of the 4. And Mike said, you know what, interesting way to look at it, but I don't know. And then last night before the game, he says, I thought about it. We're going to go with Ben tonight. And we're going to go with Cal on Friday, and we'll see what happens on Saturday. And he and I talked about a conversation. It was actually the last game before the lockdown. The last game that I saw before everything shut down in 2020 was Game 3 in the Flin Flon Humboldt playoff series. And Jacob Delorme was the goalie for Flin Flon, their number 1 goalie, and Cal Shell was his backup. He was an 18-year-old rookie backup. And Delorme had played the first 3 games. And the series was essentially over. It was just a matter of whether Flin Flon wins Game 4 or Game 5. And we were talking after the game. I said to Mike, why don't you play Shell in Game 4? I said, if you're going to go a distance in the playoffs, you're going to need both goalies. So why don't you use Cal in a game that, you don't want to say it's a nothing game in the playoffs, but I said it's a game that, you're on the road. You're up 3-0. If you don't win, you're going to get another home date out of it. And you can go back to Jake and probably, win in Game 5 up in Flin Flon. And Mike says, I never thought of that. Anyways, he used Cal in Game 4, and that ended up being the last game before the lockdown. But he actually said to me last night when we were talking about it, he says, he said, we used Cal in that game. We won that game. And it made all of us as a coaching staff feel that much better in the event that something happened to Jake. We knew that we were going to be more than okay with Cal. And so that was Cal 2 years ago. So here we are at 20 years old, and you can imagine if they had that kind of confidence in them 2 years ago, where they're at with them today. And so that's probably the one position on their team that they don't have to worry about.
There you go. Let's talk quickly about the next foe the Flin Flon Bombers will take on, the Estevan Bruins. Is their biggest asset on the ice, or is their biggest asset the gentleman who's on the bench coaching them?
Well, I'm a big fan of the coach. Jason's a friend of mine. I've known Jason for almost 20 years. I'm really happy for him that he's put together a real good team down there. I think it doesn't hurt. Estevan is a team that in past years have assembled talent, and for whatever reason, they can't put all the tools in the toolbox, if you will. But so certainly the coach is a factor. The players are factors. I'm looking forward to the game on Friday. I've said to a number of people this week that that looks like the league is sort of divided up into tiers. You've got Humboldt and Estevan at the top, and then you've got Battleford, Flin Flon, and Melfort in the next group that are good hockey teams, but are they as good as the top two? Then you got Larange and Yorkton kind of as a 6-7. Decent team, not great. Depending on the matchup, they could be a problem. And then fighting for that last playoff spot, for the most part, Kindersley, Notre Dame, maybe Melville, maybe Nipawin, and then Weyburn brings up the rear of the league. So I think tomorrow night's game, more than anything, is a show me game for Flin Flon. Let's see where you're at. It's a third game on a road trip. You're playing a top team in the league. What kind of a game are you going to give them? Now, they are missing Tremblay, as I mentioned. They're missing Cole Vardy. So really, you could make a case that they're missing a top-line forward and a top pair D for this game, and you would like to think that they'd have both of them in, a league final series against Estevan. But let's see where they're at, even without these two guys.
Absolutely. That game takes place Friday night, like you said. I like Coach Tatarnik as well. I think what he does is, he really assembles a good squad, and it doesn't hurt that they are hosting a championship in Estevan this year, are they not?
Yeah, well, they're hosting, and my bad here, because I don't even know what you call it anymore. It's not the RBC. I think they're going back to the Centennial Cup is right. Sort of what they're calling it. And that's interesting too, because I've said, when you're hosting, I don't know that you're as hungry as, say, Humboldt, Flin Flon. You're going to be there, right? Like, even if you suffer some sort of a playoff upset, or maybe get into the league final and you're down 3-2, well, you know what? If we lose game 6, we're still going to be in the Centennial Cup. So I don't know, those teams that host, they're always good, but are they hungry? And, of course, when you get into that final week, when you're hosting the national championship, you're definitely hungry. But I think, in the back of your mind, all the guys know, coaches, players, everybody knows, well, if it doesn't go our way, we're still going to be in the national event on that final week. So I think that's the one thing about hosting, is that, sometimes maybe you don't really know what you have when the chips are down.
Speaking of chips that are the other way, not down, but very up. I mean, you talk about Estevan haven't lost in 22 yet, really, in the calendar year. You consider them the cream of the crop. Humboldt might have something to say about that. What separates Humboldt and Estevan in your eyes for the team that's 1, the team that is 2, or is it given any given Sunday someone can, beat each other?
Well, I think Humboldt and Estevan could beat each other on any given Sunday, and I think Flin Flon, Melfort, Battleford could beat them too. But I think they got to be at the top of their game. The stars really got to align for them. No injuries. What makes them better? I don't know. I mean, they like both. I believe both Estevan and Humboldt have major junior goalies as number 1 goalies right now, and so that's got to be a factor for them. But they're also very deep. Like, I mean, Humboldt's been kind of planning for this. Not hosting, but they've been planning to be really good. Since about 2020, when they lost that first round series to Flin Flon. They've been kind of eyeballing this year. Even without COVID, assuming that, all the hockey could have been played all along, they were kind of eyeballing this year as to be the year that they were going to be really good, and they've delivered on that. So, I think McGrath and, is a high-end player, and Rumsey's a high-end player, and those are 2 guys that nobody else in the league really seems to have.
Right. Before we go to the break, I want to bring this question up to you. The MJ-SJ showcase did not occur due to whatever you want to call it now. I'm not going to call it what it is. But the fact that we couldn't see on display the top 140, 150 players between the two provinces for a weekend, does that hurt the league and the chances of potential interleague play in years to come? Or does that tell us that it's something we don't even need to worry about? We'll just deal with it when Western championships occur or Canadian championships occur?
Oh, I don't even know how to. I don't even know how to answer that. My guess is that the relationship between the SJ and the MJ is solid. So they're going to revive that event whenever they feel that they can revive that event.
Then, Mike, let me ask you this question. Would you like to see interleague play? I mean, cross-divisional play from the different leagues? I mean, what's wrong with...
Oh, sure. I mean, I would like
and...
to see... I would like to see anything that generates fan interest. And I think in a lot of cases you would accomplish that. I think, I've talked in many circles before where you've got, I mean, like why can't the Flin Flon Bombers play the OCN Blizzard 4 or 6 times a year? Especially now, you look at where the fan situation in a lot of these communities is not good. And so you need fans to pay the bills. And, I don't even want to know with the price of fuel right now and hotel rooms. I don't even want to know what it costs the Flin Flon Bombers to come down. I mean, they left Flin Flon on Monday, got to Yorkton Monday night, stayed overnight in Yorkton on Monday, played the Terriers on Tuesday, left Tuesday after the game, have stayed in Regina Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. We'll play, and then of course you're back and forth too, right? From Wilcox to Regina and back for that game on Wednesday. So then they'll go to Estevan tomorrow. They'll stay overnight in Estevan on Friday night, and then play Weyburn on Saturday, and then they'll drive all night from Weyburn to Flin Flon. They'll get into Flin Flon probably 7 a.m. So, and I don't want to know what that costs. Like, I can't imagine. I'm not even going to put a number on it, but it's not cheap.
See, I never even thought about the financial dollar amount to that. What I saw is the same thing you saw in terms of generating a spark with fan interest, number one. Number two, we see the model in the States with collegiate sports. Use basketball, for example, right now, the SEC versus another division, the Pac-10, or the Big Ten versus the SEC. You see these challenges at a major center for 4 or 5 days. Why not make that part of the situation to create that buzz before we can wait till middle spring to see the championships occur? But I've always wanted to see cross-divisional, cross-league play. I just hope it happens sooner than later. I
mean, anything for if it does increase fan engagement, I think all these leagues right now, and maybe even the NHL included, have got to really look at what attracts a fan. And Don Chesney did the color with me in Notre Dame on Wednesday night, and Don and I saw a lot of hockey issues on a 2.5-hour drive. But one of the things that we talked about with hockey is, and especially junior A hockey, if you're going to be honest about it, fans like rough play, they like fights, they like speed, they like offense. And most of what I just said is gone. And I don't know that it's coming back. Like for me right now, on a Saturday night since the 1st of December, I watch a National Lacrosse League. I'm not watching Hockey Night in Canada, and I'm a hockey guy. And I got season tickets to the Rush in Saskatoon. I'm driving to Rush games a couple times a month. And there's a ton of goals. There's a lot of speed. There's probably 6 or 8 big body checks every game. And a couple weeks ago against San Diego, there was 2 fights. Why can't hockey have that? I mean, for whatever reason, we've decided that it can't. And I don't know that you can bring it back. If you can't bring it back, how else are you going to bring fans to the arena? You're going to have to get innovative. Maybe some of this cross-border play is a way to do it. But whatever it is, I think they've got to try and figure something out. I'm also the president of a senior hockey league, and I'm not criticizing the junior A game, but Yorkton's got 350 to 375 fans a game. We get 20,000 people live here. I'll go half an hour north to Kenora. That town's got 2,500 people that live there. There's 350 fans watching senior hockey. So we got to do something.
Well, I will say that the Rush are far more exciting right now. I wish we had a lacrosse team in Winnipeg that could do the same. It doesn't have to be in Winnipeg. Maybe it could be in a bordering town. Regardless, we're going to solve another problem right after the break, Mike. We're going to jump ship and we're going to go into the professional ranks. You're going to take off the interim play-by-play hat, and I'm going to take the interim, host hat, and we're going to both play coaches to our favorite team here on the ice. Back with Mike Stackhouse here on the ice. I promised Mike I wouldn't take a lot of his voice away because I know he's got a busy weekend ahead. But as coach, you got to yell a little bit from behind the bench. Halfway through the season, it's All-Star break for our Winnipeg Jets. One Winnipeg Jet is going to the All-Star game as of today. Kyle Connor, he hasn't said that he's not pulling out. But quick question for you. Give me 1, 2, or 3 really good needs that our Winnipeg Jets need to show that they are a playoff team, or if that's a foregone conclusion, okay.
They're not a playoff team. I didn't believe they were a playoff team at the start of the year. I believe that even less so now. I would embark on some changes. Number one, I would blow this up. Number 2, if you're not going to blow it up, I would bring in an experienced coach to get the maximum out of the talent that's here. And number 3, I would probably, and this will, number 2 probably isn't going to happen. And number 3 surely isn't going to happen. Number 3 would be a mix of both. And I would change the chemistry of this team. I think there's chemistry issues here. And I've talked about that before. Who and what that is, I'm not sure. And I'm going to say this tongue in cheek, but when you have a player's dad as a head coach, we know that doesn't work at the bantam level. Why would that work in the NHL?
Not since the Deneen family in Hartford back in the day. I don't want to say 92, 93. Has there been a player-coach relationship involving the same family? And Mike, I couldn't agree with you more. Even when I was coaching in California, we strongly didn't want to have that relationship because there's a reason why a parent's a parent and a coach is a coach. And I'm not taking anything away from interim coach Lowry and what he can do. He has certainly done great things at a junior level in Brandon, but this is professional hockey. And I would really like to see number 2 happen because I don't think it's ready to blow up just yet. And I say number 2 and getting a veteran coach in the mix because nobody is really directing this ship on a path.
So, and again, just a theory, and I'm nowhere near this team, so I mean, it's just a theory. But when Paul Maurice resigned, I said they should hire Mike Babcock yesterday. Bring him in here, straighten these guys out, and let's see what you got. How far can you go with these guys? And we know that's not going to happen, maybe for political correct reasons, but that's the type of coach that they need. They should have just hired him like right now and said, this is what we're doing. But the other thing that we haven't, and I don't know, I mean, I don't do mainstream media anymore. I haven't watched a newscast in almost 2 years. I don't watch intermission shows anymore because of the content that's there. Quite frankly, it's not content like what you and I are talking about. It's right. So it's not worth my time to watch it, but I'm assuming they have not talked about this. The Winnipeg Jets were averaging about 2,000 fans less per game this year before they had to ban fans altogether. They were averaging about 2,000 fans less than what they were every other year. So if you take those 2,000 fans and if you assume they're paying, let's say they're paying $200 a night to go to the game, some of them are going to pay more than that. But if you base that around $200 a night, you quickly find a dollar figure when you times that by 40 home games. And you realize that when Paul Maurice resigned, you can save money by not hiring a coach and just going with the guy that you currently have on staff, whether it's somebody's dad or some other guy. And so I think the Winnipeg Jets are looking at this from a financial perspective as well. And they're saying, look, our revenue is down. And if our revenue is down, we're for sure not bringing in a coach to make more money than what Maurice was making. And we can maybe cut our losses. We're not able to have fans. So we'll just go with what we got. And I think that's what's happened here. I think, they've just sort of looked at it and gone, well, we're losing our shirt. And they are losing their shirt, by the way. I mean, there's people that look at this and go, oh, well, they're doing the right thing by going along with these rules and playing to empty buildings. And thankfully they didn't pick profits over health and go to Saskatoon. But I'm sorry. I mean, if you think that that's a good idea for them to play in front of an empty building, and think that that's for the long-term survival of this team, you're in a dreamland. You don't understand how this business works. When this team came back in whatever year it was, 2012 or whatever it was, Gary Bettman says this rink has to be full. If this rink is not full, the NHL does not work in Winnipeg. Well, guess what? It's not full. And it's not their fault. Yeah, but it's not full. Right? It doesn't matter whose fault it is. That rink is not full. So I think they've done some things to cut corners to save costs. And one of the things that they've done to cut a corner to save cost is they sort of look behind the bench and went, well, you know what? How many more wins would Mike Babcock, and I'm just using Mike Babcock as an example, how many more wins would Mike Babcock give us than Dave Lowry? And the answer might be 0, right? We don't know the answer to that.
The answer might be at the same time it gets us in the playoffs. And we play St. Louis, who we've beaten twice in the last 9 games because that's only 2 wins in regulation. I'm just saying. I agree, Mike. It's someone to right the ship because there's no identity on the players.
No, I see, and now I am going to point fingers, and I get kind of passionate about this because I like the Jets.
That's why I'm asking because I know you like the Jets.
I look, you know what? Mark Scheifele, not a number 1 center. You look at number 1 centers around this league, playing a lot better than him. I hear a lot of people, they're happy with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Well, again, not a number 1 center. Pierre-Luc Dubois looks like a really good number 2 center. Mark Scheifele looks like a pretty good number 2 center. You don't have a number 1. You got 2 number 2s. And when you made the Dubois trade, it was for depth at center. Well, Paul Stastny's played the wing a ton of times. And Dubois played the wing a ton of times last year. So I don't understand. Like, all you did was trade away a winger, Lionel, and then you replaced him with Stastny, or you really didn't do what you said you were going to do. And now, injuries haven't helped. And actually, we've seen now that maybe this team isn't as deep as they thought they were. You got Ehlers out. You had Wheeler out. Nobody else really stepped up. Perfetti's been okay. But if you're a contending team, is he a first-line winger?
No.
I mean, I think he's probably going to be. He's going to be. But I don't know that and the defense, I mean, how many times have they changed the personnel on the defense and it's the same mistakes and the same issues year after year after year? And it doesn't matter if it's Brendan Dillon or, pick a guy who was on the team last year or 2 years ago that's not on the team. It's the same thing year after year.
Yeah. So, Mike, you bring up an important point here, and it's a conversation I've had for the last couple of days with other colleagues. This team doesn't look like they have the depth. Is that because those depth players in this minor system in the AHL for the Moose haven't been given enough playing time to get their skates wet? Or is it they just realize that those players aren't the right players? I mean, we're looking at guys on the taxi squad. 7 guys get sent down yesterday. You're seeing Reichel get a couple of games here and there. You're seeing Sandberg finally get in the lineup. Now he's injured. Do we need to maybe focus and put a concerned effort towards giving those Moose players that are getting called up the chance to play more than 1 game or 2 games, or is it not something that could work?
So is Ville Heinola, is he any good or not?
That's the question. I'll answer that with a question: is do you think he's better than Sami Niku, who they got rid of and who now is put on waivers? Do I think his potential is there? I don't know. Do I think there's potential there? Sure. But
remember in the bubble?
I don't see a player like Dustin Byfuglien in the mix that's going to give that defense a fear and a reckoning like it did 3 years ago when the Jets were in the playoffs and you were scared to see 33 on the blue line. Just ask Mr. Stone about that when he was a senator, and questions have been answered. There hasn't been that re-identification to a group on the blue line. I've never seen a defensive core and I'm going to be critical here on all of them, whether they're 5'11" or 6'5", 6'8", if you want to include 64 in this matter, so soft in the front of the net. And when I don't see body play being put into proper position and playing goal side or tying up a puck, is it because their offensive players are that much better than our defenders? I don't know. But last time I checked, this defensive core was supposed to be more veteran, supposed to have more practice in those matters and lead by example, and they haven't.
So, and then a couple more things. Remember in the bubble, Scheifele got hurt. Jansen Harkins went to the top line. I think he scored the only goal against Calgary in the last game. How many chances has Jansen Harkins got in the top six? Like, not very many. Like, he's very seldom played in a top six.
He's playing with Lowry. He's playing on the fourth line.
So he's not there. Vesalainen, is he any good? Like, I don't think we know. He like, and then to go back to another thing that I mentioned earlier about the chemistry. Okay, so we know Evander Kane has his issues, but Evander Kane didn't fit in and he was gone. Jacob Trouba didn't fit in and he was gone. Patrick Laine didn't fit in and he was gone. Dustin Byfuglien, for whatever reason, didn't want to play anymore. I mean, are those four guys a problem?
That's a good question. Is the locker room being controlled by a certain mob?
And I understand. I mean, when Evander Kane, when things come to a head with him and he's gone, I think we all kind of went, well, yeah, you know what? There's definitely issues there. Then with Trouba, you're thinking, well, he doesn't really like Winnipeg and he wants too much money and the border. Whatever, right? But you talk about nobody that's like Byfuglien. Trouba would be that guy, right? He would be the closest thing to that guy. But there was excuses were made and he was gone. And then Byfuglien, for whatever reason, and I don't know that it's ever come out that like the guy just all of a sudden didn't want to play anymore. And he's gone. And you can say what you want about Laine, but I'm looking at Laine in Columbus and I'm thinking like, man, you're wasting your time there. You're wasting your time. But you know what? He's doing it. He's playing. They're losing games. He's scoring goals. He's doing his job. But I think it's pretty clear in Winnipeg. He was checking out. And if you look at it, he wanted, if you remember, some of the dispute with Laine was that he wanted to be the first. He wanted that team to be built around him. He said, "I want to be a first line guy. I want to be the guy." And the Jets basically said no. Well, where are they today? I mean, you can say what you want, and I like Dubois. Don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't like Dubois, but I think this team today would be better if Laine's their top line winger and they're building their team around him.
It's an interesting comment, and I mean, I'm not going to say that I don't like Dubois either. I think this year he has shown better color than last year.
And the depth, right? We talked about depth.
At the same time, Dubois has had to step up because other veterans that are supposed to be putting in 15, 20 goals haven't.
And you talk about depth. We gave Roslovic away in that trade.
We did. And he's the one that's got the most points of all three of them.
Just gave him away.
Yeah. Last question before I let you go on the break. When do you think NHL returns back to normal in Canada? Or does it? I mean, how many do you think Gary Bettman and Bill Daly wake up every morning and saying, what are we doing?
So, I mean, how long is the show? We're going to go until almost 7, right? Is that what we're going to do?
We're going to do one more segment after this, but I'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay. So, I mean, and I don't want to make this a political thing, but I'm going to make it a political thing anyway. I guess it depends on this convoy, what's going on down there. I mean, if they get their way, we're going to be normal very, very quickly. And maybe by this time next week, we're normal. If everybody sort of pits in and gets stubborn about it, I think there's a chance we're never normal, ever again. I think for me, the shot across the bow, if you will, was sent by Major League Baseball a few weeks ago when they said, we're not coming to Montreal. We're not letting Tampa Bay do this. Tampa Bay can play in front of 3,000 fans forever. We don't care. You're not going to Montreal. And a lot of people, again, mainstream media and a lot of guys go, oh, geez, that's too bad. I wonder what Major League Baseball is thinking here. Major League Baseball is thinking the same thing that the NHL is thinking, but they're not really talking about. They want to get the heck out of here. They want nothing to do with this country. Like you've got full stadiums. Like, and I laughed the other night. Like Kyle Connor's family is having a great time in Detroit watching the game with the Red Wings. No masks. Everyone's having a ball. And you can't even really play a game in Winnipeg. Or like in Halifax where they got the Thunderbirds and a cross team. They weren't allowed to play at all. No fans are not. They weren't allowed to play. And you can argue science and you can say, well, you know what? The Americans don't care, whatever. The reality is this. Pro sports has moved on. The NFL has got full stadiums. The NHL's got full stadiums. All of these sports in American cities have got full stadiums. And in Canada, we can't get out of our own way. We can barely play. And it's laughable. I'm watching a full hockey rink, and then I see a picture of the Scotties in Thunder Bay, and there's nobody there. It's sad. It's laughable and sad. And I mean, you can't, there's just nothing that you can say to me, well, we're being safe. No, you're not. You're being stupid. I'm sorry. You're stupid at this point. And I've gone, I've been to, I think 3 Rush games now, and there's about 9,000 in the building. There used to be about 13 or 14. Some people don't like the Vax Pass. Some people probably are legitimately scared of getting the virus. And some people probably don't have money because everything costs so much more. But the reality is that there's 9,000 people watching the Rush. And to my knowledge, and I'm pretty sure we would hear about it if it happened, there hasn't been virus carnage. And to just finish off, if you actually listen to experts, real experts, they will tell you that they see very little spread of this at sports venues. And the reason why is because when you go to a sports game, even though that place is packed, you interact with almost nobody. Like, I'm different. I'm a pretty social guy. But most people, when they go to their sports games, they take their seat, and if they go with their buddy, they visit with their buddy. They don't visit with the other guy on the other side who they've never met before. They're certainly not talking to the guy in front of them, and they're not turned around talking to the guy behind them. So even though there's 15 or 20,000 fans there, your interaction is pretty much limited to the guy that you brought to the game. And when you're in the concession line or you're walking around the concourse, you're simply not exposed for a long enough time to spread anything. And if we assume, and it is the case most of the time, if we assume that people aren't sick when they go to the game, you're going to be fine. And we haven't been honest about it. We haven't been fair. I'm frankly shocked that teams like the Jets and the Ottawa Senators, who must be near broke, I'm surprised these teams haven't spoke up in a public way and advocated for themselves a little bit better. And I've actually lost the ability to feel any amount of sympathy for them, because if they want to chop themselves off at the knees, I guess, go right ahead. But I know one of the things that I thought of the other day, I thought, what would be a good thing? Why don't you advocate to play full building? Everybody's vaccinated. Everybody's in masks. And I think with the Jets, they say it's about $1.4 million for every game they play that there's no fans. Well, you know what? Why don't you let them have fans? And then after every game, the Jets will donate $500,000 to Frontline, not bureaucratic health, Frontline Health. $500,000 goes to Frontline Health after every game.
Interesting concept. Mike, I like it. I'm going to cut you off there because we could go down a rabbit hole and an 18-wheeler trucker convoy conversation nonstop. But let's take another break. On our last segment, we're going to talk about something that started already, but the opening ceremonies occur late tonight, depending on where you're at. The Olympics in Beijing are here. Stay with us here on the ice.
Welcome to Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, your world-class academic and hockey training facility created to maximize each student's athletic and academic potential. Blackjack Stewart Arena, home of the Buffalo, is inside the 46,000 square foot complex, as well as a curling rink and other facilities. The students have a unique combination of successful, well-rounded education at Pilot Mountain Collegiate Institute and the professional hockey training in an encouraging community. The years of experience of on-ice coaching propel our students to the next level, both mentally and physically, in a professional environment.
Back here with Mike Stackhouse here on the ice on ASTV. I'd like to thank our sponsors, of course, Oaks Book Fields, Case Financial, Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, as well as Toby Hockey. Mike,
sorry about the rant on the last segment. You really triggered me, Mike, there, right?
You know what? That's why I have you on my show, because if I said it, no one would listen. And be followers and my followers and everybody else, maybe we'll ruffle some feathers, and I like that. I'm okay with that. I might get in some hot water, but hey. It's minus 38 outside. My feet would enjoy it. Nonetheless, stayed up last night a little bit, past my bedtime, watched Canada versus Switzerland. 12-1 was the final, but that's going to be my sport taking center stage, the women's ice hockey. How about you, Mike? What are you looking forward to seeing in the next couple of weeks or so in China? And how much sleep do you plan on losing?
I don't plan on watching it, to be honest with you. And you know what? I'm happy for everybody that's going, and I hope they do well. I certainly wish them nothing but success, but I don't think we should be there. I don't think these games should be happening. Again, that's political, but I mean, if we can't hold a World Juniors, if it's too dangerous for us to hold a World Juniors, why is it safe for us to send some guys over there to play?
What's good for one player isn't good for another. I
understand
this argument 100%.
The NHL guys, I mean, I get it. The NHL guys don't want to get caught over there and do a 5-week isolation if they end up testing positive. Well, why does that make it okay for the other guys that are there?
Do you think it's the fact that, I'll speak from the women's game just for as an example, the fact that they've had their championships canceled now 2 years in a row, that they were just itching to get into a competitive level, and
100%
something like that happen. I mean, I would be, tickled pink to say, you know what, we've got this okay to go. Let's do everything we have to stay safe, and let's go.
So let's be honest about this. The reason why the World Juniors were canceled wasn't because it was dangerous. It was because they already canceled the women's event.
Yeah.
Right? Let's just be honest about it. Yeah. They had to save some face. They canceled the women's event. There was no reason to cancel it. They bailed early. There was a way to hold this event. They found ways to hold events pretty much since the summer of 2020. They found ways to do them. They could have held this women's event. They call it off, and then they're getting bad publicity, and they had no choice but to call it off. I mean, the World Juniors, like, do you remember last year when Canada put a whipping on Germany because they had like 8 guys in COVID protocol?
Yeah. And
then all of a sudden we're canceling games because 1 or 2 are like.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to get behind anything that's going on in China when again, we just won't be honest about it. We refuse to be honest about it, and we continue to do these things because we think that, instead of just saying, gosh, you know what? We've made some wrong decisions. So let's stop making wrong decisions and make right decisions. Well, we made a wrong decision. And if we admit to a mistake, we're going to look bad. So let's make another wrong decision. And before you know it, you've got like a mountain of wrong decisions, and it's tough for me to get behind it. And that goes for all of this. I just think, you know what? Just say we're not familiar with what's gone on here in the last 2 years. It's new for everybody, but we do see the error of our ways. And rather than compound it by continuing to double down on wrong things, we're just going to admit that, you know what? Sorry, this is new. We don't know what we're doing. Now we have some new information, so we're going to do things differently. I'd respect people a lot more if they just said that.
Let's circle the wagons back to the first conversation we had, Mike. I really appreciate your time. How many names have you butchered in the last 2 days in the press box?
I am very self-conscious about butchering names and always ask for, how does this guy say his name? Now, the only one on Flin Flon, which I'm uncertain about to some degree, is Weisshorster, number 37. but no one has said that I've said it wrong. I almost got caught with Notre Dame last night. They've got a winger with the last name spelled Probe, and it's Proby. So I almost got caught on that one. So it was a good thing I asked. And Notre Dame actually had a few guys. They got a really good D-man. Sagroso is a 17-year-old on the back end, and I'm just trying to think who else Notre Dame had. I think there was about 3 names on their team that I was glad I asked how to pronounce their names. But the Flin Flon names are all good. Yorkton, of course, I'm very familiar with their team. And when I get to Estevan tomorrow, I'll make sure I ask Tarts, how do you say these guys' names?
Does those conversations, show that not only do you care about your position, the passion you're going to deliver on the air, but does that just show, like you said, a common courtesy to proper pronunciation to a name, to a team that they rightfully deserve, they earned? Because, I've had my name butchered left and right, where I'm from, where I'm not from, my nationality, my ethnicity, all that jazz. Stackhouse is pretty easy to say. If you screw up Stackhouse, you got problems. But I could see how there are names. Is that a conversation you enjoy having, and is it rightfully deserved?
It is one of the most important things to me, and I'll tell you a couple quick stories. Yorkton had a player years ago, and he was a veteran, and I was working in the media, but didn't have to do play-by-play or public address or anything like that. But they wanted me to do public address for the home opener, so I'm announcing all the players as they come out of the dressing room. And I asked the coach at the time, I said, you know what? I'm almost positive I know everybody's name, but if you don't mind, I'd just like to go in the dressing room before everybody comes out and just do a roll call to make sure I've got everybody's name right. And one of the players spelled his name Nantes. And for 2 full years, everybody in town called him Nantes. And so when I came up to his name, I said, and Bryce Nantes? And he says, you know what? It's actually Nantes. And I said, and that's why I'm in the room. That's why I'm here. And the other one, which is a more famous name, I guess, is years ago on the Brandon Wheat Kings. Now, kind of the same thing. I wasn't a play-by-play guy or a public address announcer. I was just on TV, so I would do highlights and whatnot. But I never really concerned myself a whole lot with names doing highlights. Well, I'm doing public address for the Wheat Kings. They'd asked me to fill in to do public address. And so same thing. I asked Bob Lowe's, I said, I just want to go in the dressing room, make sure I got everybody 100%. So I go in there, and they had I think he was from Slovakia, and his name was, we always called him Milan Bartovic. And so I said his name, and he says, it's Bartovic. And I said, and then he says to me, he goes, but still call me Bartovic because everyone's going to think you're crazy. And I said, but I would rather be right and crazy than wrong and not crazy.
So how did you say the name?
Bartovic.
There you go.
Milan Bartovic. Perfect. That's how and I did public address that last year. I was in Brandon when he was there. I think I did public address 6 or 7 times, and I would go down in between periods or after the game, and fans would say, "What are you doing?" And I said, "That's his name, man. That's his name." And I've done play-by-play in years past where some of the other countries would come to Saskatchewan and have like pre-World Junior games, and it's actually a lot of fun to go and talk to the translators and go through the rosters and say, how do you say all these names? And you spend a little bit more time on it because there's quite a few names, but you actually learn and respect and appreciate. And I think they appreciate too when you say the name back, right? When they'll tell you the name, you repeat it. They're like, no. And especially the Russians, so the way they roll the tongue. And you can tell that, when you leave the conversation, like I say, sometimes it's not a 30-second conversation. Sometimes it's like you go over a name like 6 times and they're like, yeah, you got it. And so you can see that they appreciate the effort. And it is something I take a lot of pride in is just, let's make sure we get the name right.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mike. I think it's a lost, it's something you always want to make sure you do due diligence on. Nothing like a PA announcer pronouncing a name wrong to an Adam player, a U15 player for the first time ever, and it's like terrible feeling.
There's a French kid who plays for Melville. I did public address for them earlier this year, and here in Saskatchewan, if you look at the name, it looks like it's Nicholas Sampson, but he's from Quebec, and the N at the end of the last name is silent, And there is a bit of a French dialect to saying the name, but of course out here in Saskatchewan, we don't speak French at all. I'm from the East Coast, so I can sort of do it, but it's been so long since I lived on the East Coast, and so I've come close, and so it's like Nicolas Samson, and so you take a bit of pride in it when you can get that out, because they hear it, right? They hear it
exactly, and they're going to hear it on Friday and Saturday this weekend as you enjoy the trip to Estevan and Weyburn. Mike, I appreciate your time. Really great catching up with you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Do miss it sometimes, but hopefully you stay well this weekend. Is there a secret remedy you take during the game for keeping your voice so good?
No, it's not really that good. I drink water. I drink water, but I also find at my age I have to go to the bathroom a little bit more frequently, so it's kind of a catch-22 with that.
So you got to sip on the ice cubes.
Yeah.
That was my key, was ice cubes, but I'll leave that secret to last. Mike Stackhouse with me on the ice. Thanks for joining me. Really appreciate it, Mike. Bringing more goodness to the greatness. Of course, we'll be back on Tuesday next week. Enjoy the Olympics if you're watching. Enjoy the All-Star Games, Pro Bowl this weekend as well on your favorite MSM network. But other than that, take care of yourselves. Hopefully you don't have to shovel too much more snow, Mike. And see you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody.